Hi, this is Patrick Kilpatrick, and you're listening to Rocking at the Movies with Shane Comley-White.
Welcome everybody, my name is Shane Comley-White and you're with me at Rocking at the Movies, and today we have a special guest from a whole bunch of movies that I grew up watching, and it's actually a complete honor and a privilege to be able to speak to Patrick Kilpatrick. All right, so a little bit of a breakdown. He has got over 170 movies and TV shows that he's done. He's a writer, producer, as well as director, obviously an actor. And he's been in a lot of action movies with a lot of well-known action stars as well. So Patrick, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for giving up your time to be part of the show, and looking forward to hearing everything about you.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Only a pleasure, only a pleasure. So you have been in a lot of different movies over the number of years, and the one that I remember you from mainly is Best of the Best 2. Okay, you played Finch in Best of the Best 2. Do you remember that role?
I do, yeah. I remember it for a number of reasons. You know, I think that came right after, what was the year that occurred?
That was in the 1980s. So if I remember correctly, it was about 1989.
Well, we had a worldwide real estate recession or something. And for some reason, there was no acting work for a long, long time. Okay. And so that was the first film I went in on for about 7 or 8 months. And I at the time, I was not used to that amount of time down from acting, because I was working all the time. So I remember I was really angry.
Okay.
But by the time the audition happened, and I walked in and I just did what I was doing and slammed my heels together, and I ended up getting the part. One of the most wonderful things about that movie for me was the people, because Philip Rhee is such a great guy.
Yeah. And
Simon Rhee, his brother, the stunt coordinator, is awesome. And also I met Ralph Mueller, who was fantastic. And he and I, we remained friends, and he's one of the funniest guys to have lunch with. Just a great character. Really great people.
That's the thing. I interviewed Simon about 2 years ago, and it was also by chance. I was trying to be able to get a whole bunch of actors to interview, and he just came across as such a nice individual, very welcoming and very, very open with his knowledge as well. So it's very nice.
They're great brothers. Philip, I had to interrogate him in that movie, and I slipped up a couple of times, and I actually hit him in the jaw about 2 times in a row, which is a horrifying thing to do. But he handled it with such grace. We all get hit a little bit once in a while, but just handled it so gracefully. And I was practically in tears because I was so upset that I kept hitting him. But he was really a great gentleman.
Yeah.
The other thing I remember about that movie so much, first of all, Robert Radler did not want me on that movie.
Okay.
He wanted to hire somebody else. And so when I got there, I could feel the energy that he was not pleased that I was there.
Yeah.
But then after I did one take, then he became a pal.
Okay.
And I was really happy I overcame his reservations. The other thing is we had a helicopter. My character goes up in a helicopter.
Yes.
And I think they got the helicopter from the local farmer. So it was really kind of death-defying. And I was having a blast doing it, but in retrospect, there was probably minimal safety on this helicopter. And we were diving down and shooting all over the place. And it was a fun job. I had a good time.
Look, I must say, I used to watch that movie, both of them, 1 and 2, every single time I had a martial arts tournament. So I come from a martial arts background, and those were the movies that inspired me to actually go to those tournaments and do the best that I can. So they have a very special place in my heart, and I've always loved watching them. I've watched them hundreds of times, you know.
Well, I'm really glad that you enjoy them. What do you do, jiu-jitsu?
No, it's a Korean martial art, very similar to Taekwondo. So it's actually very close to what Simon and Philip do, with all the kicks, the spinning kicks, and all that as well. So it's very interesting.
Yeah, Philip is, you know, I wish he'd done more acting. He kind of vectored into more of the producing gig, which I kind of understand economically and all that, but he was so good looking, and I would have liked to have seen him do more acting.
Well, it's the same as his brother as well. They've done a lot together, and I've also noticed that Simon's done a lot of the choreography, and that's kind of where I've evolved to as well. So I'm not the kind of person that wants to be in front of the camera, but here I am in front of the camera doing interviews.
Yeah.
But to actually watch what he does, learn from what he said, and the discussion we've had has actually caused me to become a choreographer. Very small and still very fledgling, if you want to call it that, but definitely part of it. How did you get into going from acting into writing scripts, or even directing and producing yourself?
Well, I actually started out a writer. When I got out of university, all I wanted to do was become a writer. And so I went to New York, and I very quickly moved up the ranks of writers for magazines. And I was writing either big ad campaigns for the magazine themselves or journalism. And I did that for about almost a decade, through my 20s. And but I kind of got bored after a while, and so I took a break from writing. I was at Time Incorporated, which at the time the magazines were the pinnacle of the media world. This was before HBO and all of that stuff, and so I ended up at Time Inc., which was kind of the top of the heap, and I was making a lot of money, but I was kind of bored, and I took a break from that to write a novel, and I ended up sharing a house to save money in Connecticut with an actor named John Chillinger, who was becoming a big-time Broadway director. And so I ended up being his assistant, and I wrote a play instead of a novel, which was what I had planned to do during the break. And the play got produced, and I was asked to join theater companies as the guy, it's called the literary manager, the guy who selects the plays. And so then I'd start subbing in acting when they needed something. And I worked as an assistant director and director off Broadway, and kind of wrote my way into acting, and it sort of took off. I mean, I think I know that I kind of was a performer to begin with, because I'd done all kinds of athletics, and people were always telling me, you're an actor, and I'd go, what are you talking about? I'm a writer over at Time Inc. And so, hold on just a second, I'm going to put my phone on silent here. There we go. So that's how it happened. I never really calculated to becoming an actor. I certainly worked hard once I got there. In a sense, I'm still doing the same thing, writing and acting. I started writing scripts around 1987 because I got to LA and there was a writer's strike, so there was no acting work. So I took the 6 months down to teach myself how to write scripts. It took a while to make the transition from journalism and advertising, but you know, you get better at it, you work at it, and it's been a great blessing because it's supplemented the economics of acting, because we all go through slow periods. And I've done pretty well, particularly in the last several years as a screenwriter. And then, of course, you write a script and you don't want to see it just sit there. So you say, I've got to find the money for this, or I've got to produce it. And that's kind of how it happened. It's really sort of the natural evolution of things. I have a team of people I work with, and we do things collaboratively. The scripts, I might be the chief writer, but everybody takes a look and comments on everything. Yeah. I have a brain trust. The principal in that is my wife, Heidi, and she now co-writes things with me, and we put together strategic materials to complement the scripts to present them to streaming services and studios, stuff like that.
Okay, because I've also been thrown into the whole writing stuff. So I got into the movies now because of the COVID lockdowns. And I think COVID has been the biggest life changer for everyone in the world. So you either run with it or you just sit back and do nothing. But I've been thrown into the writing and also directing out of the blue without any experience whatsoever. How, as a new person, how would you suggest just trying to get your scripts out to the people? What would your best advice be with that?
Well, it's brutal. There's no question about it.
Yeah.
We come from the premises that nobody reads scripts until they want to.
Yeah.
Now, look, I can call somebody in because I've done all this acting work, and I can say, I've written a script, would you read it? That doesn't mean the higher-ups of the studio system or the agencies or whatever, but production companies. But
yeah.
I'm a way ahead of that game in getting people to read scripts. But we still come from the point of view that people don't read scripts until they want to. So simultaneously, let's suppose I get a script writing assignment. Simultaneous to writing that script, we create what I call strategic presentation materials. Some people call it a lookbook. Some people call it a pitch deck. We break it up into much smaller pieces because, for a couple of reasons, we don't want to send out the whole Megillah because you're running the possibility of intellectual property theft. So we create maybe a 7-stage presentation that kind of gives a little bit of what we're doing, but very powerfully and very quickly and very visually. What is it designed to do? It's supposed to convince them that you're really adept at imagery and story and place and time,
yeah,
and tell them what it's about really fast. And if you get through 2 of those presentation materials and they're not interested and they say, okay, let me see the script, then they're not really going to be interested in it at all. So, and the other thing that's really good about building those strategic materials is it really allows you to actually produce the movie with a great deal of a greater degree of facility, because you've explored imagery all over the place. You've studied wardrobe. You've studied a place and time. If it's a period piece, you've really got I call it the cinematic signature in your head already. So for us, that's a key component in the process. Very rarely do people read scripts. Investors don't read scripts. I mean, you have to have the script and you have to be able to drop it at demand, but the vast majority of people either promoting films and buying them don't really read the scripts, certainly not right off the bat.
No, definitely. Well, maybe I'll leech off you one day down the line and see if I can drop a script by you and see if you like it. But no pressure.
To be honest, out of personal just preservation, what happens with us is I don't even read. Let's suppose I read your script and it's the greatest thing since sliced bread.
Yeah.
Well, then we still got to find the money for it.
That's also true, yeah.
Okay, so and that can be a heartbreaking process, or it takes a supreme act of will. Generally, I get hired as a consultant, and then I'll dive into the material and I'll tell the person what I think is needed, give them notes. And again, you know, it's not a... Look, none of this sounds very positive about the scriptwriting process. If you're a scriptwriter, you should keep writing scripts.
Yeah.
And you should try to get an agent who's going to drive your scripts into the buyers of the scripts and all of that. All of that is powerful, and it's really good, and it's a great skill to have. I think you also need to figure out how to build those lookbooks so that you can present that in a manner so that people who don't read scripts get excited about your project.
No, thank you so much. That's absolutely incredible advice.
Generally, I'd like to get hired as a consultant first, and then I'll dive into it and start advising them. Almost in the way, I'm not a lawyer, and I'm not in any way, shape, or form purporting to be that, but to advise somebody on the ways that they need to. Look, we all want to see the movie made, or the television series, whatever it is. There's a way to do that wandering in the wilderness, and there's a way to do that in what I would call an A-list way of doing it. And frankly, the older you get, the more you don't want to waste your time on anything.
Which is also true, yeah. So, going back to some of the shows that you've been on a lot, and I've seen quite a few, and you've done a lot of your own stunt work, or even at least, let's say, some of your own action work.
I still am.
You still am?
Well, I'm directing a movie and producing a movie that I wrote right now. Interesting, I want to jump back for a second.
Sure.
Simon Rhee, I called him and sent him over. At that point, the script was about 50 pages. It was really more of a treatment. And I said, would you do the stunt choreography on it?
Yes.
And he said no, because he hated it. But what I'm really excited about is now the movie we're halfway through the production, and it's really shaped up really, I think, brilliantly.
Okay.
And so I'm kind of looking forward to going back to him and saying, hey, you should have stuck with me on this one, because all things go through a development process.
Yeah.
They really do. And so anyway, what was the question on that one?
I'm just going to jump back as well. So, Simon, if ever you need another choreographer, especially an international one in Africa, please contact me. I'm always willing to learn as much as possible.
I'll tell you how you can write your own ticket.
Yeah.
For that. I've got 2 movies I'd love to shoot in South Africa.
Okay.
Okay. What we should do is sign an agreement, and you try to find somebody who's going to put up some money for the films.
Okay.
You can certainly be the stunt coordinator on it for that, and really they'd be a great place to shoot. I know, and I know the rand to dollar ratio is great, and they're brilliant movies. The scripts are done, the strategic materials. We'll have a Zoom call, and I'll show you what's going on, and then try to set up something so that move into the producing of it, you know, and you get a good executive producer fee, and you can do the stunt choreography on it, provided you're capable of doing that.
Well, my first movie that I was put in, It was last year, this time last year. And I know it sounds very weird that it's such a short span of time, but I was asked to do 5 fight scenes of this. And it turned out to be about 120 fight elements within this movie. It was a complete, I was thrown in the deep end. I was way out of my depth with it. But my martial arts background, plus my bodyguarding background that I've got, and all of the weaponry that I've got as well, I've been training for 24 years now. So I just used that, and it became quite realistic. So
I'm sure between the two of us, we could do a great job. You have to share the bodyguarding thing. I did bodyguarding when I first got out of college in New York for rock groups.
Really?
Oh yeah, I was like Jimi Hendrix bodyguard, and not the night he died in England, but the Grateful Dead, the Beach Boys, Rod Stewart, Procol Harum, Jethro Tull, who else? Elvis.
Are you serious? That is unbelievable.
What happened was I got out of college and I went to, which by the way, today I was just, I've got a second volume of a memoir coming out. And the first volume covers all of this, but it's called Dying for Living. It's on Amazon.com. This is shameless moments of self-promotion. But it's called Dying for Living, and it's on Amazon and Barnes & Noble, or you can go to PatrickKilpatrick.com if somebody wants to get an autographed copy. But yeah, I went to New York, and my then girlfriend, her best friend's boyfriend, was putting together a crew of guys to bodyguard rock groups when they came to New York and the New York area. And so I got on it, and I made a lot of money doing that. And I wasn't making so much money as a writer at that time during the day, but at night, I mean, it was a really epic period. It only lasted about 2 years, but I made a lot of money doing that. And it was fantastic to be on the stage with all of that kind of music. And Jefferson Airplane, I did it for Jefferson Starship, Quicksilver Messenger Service, who you may not know who, they were kind of a Grateful Dead jam band. Steve Marriott, Peter Frampton, a lot of guys. It was really a wonderful experience. And again, I just kind of stumbled into it. It was mostly, are you familiar with American football?
Yes. Yep.
Well, the New York Jets are located up in that area. Yeah. And mostly it was guys who were New York Jets, and it was off season. So there were about 9 of us, and they didn't want police officers at concerts at that time.
Yeah.
And it was crazy. It was very lucrative, very violent eventually.
Yeah.
It was fun.
Definitely fun to have the violent part.
What kind of bodyguarding did you do?
I did the official training around the World Cup that we had here, which was in 2010. So I trained in 2009, and it was if you can say, the corporate side of the bodyguarding. So yes, we did also look after the celebs as well, but it was mainly of the corporate. So I took over the corporate roles. So I would have loved to done more on stage stuff as well. But it's opened a massive door to a lot of things, because of training, because of the awareness and everything else that you learn, gives you a lot more opportunities down the line. So I'm using whatever I learned there and here.
Let's just for a second return to this thing. Look, like the movie, what I was talking about with, I went to Amsterdam, and I ended up getting the money to do a film. I wasn't even really looking for it at that juncture. But that person became an executive producer on the movie that I'm directing and producing right now. It's an action film. I'll send you the teaser. Shoot me an email. Yeah. I think we have your email, right?
Yes, you do, yeah.
Shoot me your email. I'll send you the information on that. But and we'll set something up because it's pretty standard kind of stuff. I mean, I paid 3 executive producer fees on the last movie that we did, and it was really people hooking us up with people who were interested in funding, and we have a long history of doing well by people and making them money and getting them their principal and interest and their profit back. So it's something we should talk about. I'd love to shoot in South Africa.
Have you ever been to South Africa?
I haven't. I've played South Africans.
Yes, I've heard that.
Played South African on a television show called Jake and the Fat Man.
Yep.
I did a lot of dialects. I used to do. I've done a lot of dialects.
How do you find trying to get the South African accent? Because a lot of people always want to go the Afrikaans route. Okay.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's the most commonly recognizable accent of the South Africans as well. How did you get into that, or how did you find it?
Well, here's the thing. You know, I've taught actors for a long time, hundreds of them, and one of the central things we stress, aside from learning how to write and produce and direct, but key to that is, look, what's the point of having a great acting career? How do you do that? And you do that by becoming more useful to the business. Look, if you can ride a motorcycle, then you can do that. If you can do dialects, you can do that. And the moment you learn how to do dialects, it opens up a whole bunch of other work, just like singing and dancing. So I urge young actors to always try to cultivate 2 accents a month in the first couple of years. When I was starting, Juilliard in New York, the great university, had the finest dialect coaches. And so I made a passionate hobby out of it. I would go over and I would pay $50 then. It's probably 175 or 200 now, but pay $50 and study an accent and pick up a dialect. You know, French, Texas, Mississippi, South African, New Zealand, Australian, Cockney. There's a million of them. So the more you do that, the more, like learning lines, the more your mind, like a muscle in the gym, becomes attuned to that. So pretty soon you can do it very, very readily. Yeah. And then what happens in the business is pretty soon you get known as the guy or the girl who can do dialects. Yeah. So I didn't find, what I would do is the South African thing, I got the audition, I looked up a movie called Dry White Season, which was with Marlon Brando and Helen Mirren and Donald Sutherland, some South African actors. Takes place in South Africa. I watched the movie. I went in on the audition, did it well enough, although I think it probably resembled more Cockney when I went in there. But it was good enough to get past the casting director. Yeah. And so I booked the job, and then I would always call a dialect coach, and they're readily available. You don't even have to meet with them now. You used to have to go over to their place, and you go through the script. But now you do it all on the phone. Yeah. And you pay a certain amount of money, and you polish it so that by the time you do the job, you do it really well. I didn't find South African challenging, any more so than anything else. I've done Russian, German. Your mind becomes more adept at it, just like working out.
Yeah, it just becomes a second nature in a way that you easy. You can just pull that tool out of your tool bag, and there it is. It's a good thing.
In the same way, it's good to know how to ride motorcycles or do dialects. It's good to know how to handle firearms. How many acting movies do they have firearms in it? Yeah. So I always loved doing that stuff. So I would train with Navy SEALs or Marine Recon guys or the Los Angeles Police Department, because they were always putting guns in my hands, and I wanted to know what I was doing.
That's a good thing. So do you enjoy the action side of all the movies that you do?
Oh, yeah, I do. I was talking about that movie I'm doing that I asked Simon to do. I'm still doing my own stunts. I have these wonderful pads, and I get the suits made a little bigger, and I put the pads in. You know, there's an old saying, you always fall on the place that you don't have a pad. So you want to make sure you've got, and they have some amazing pads now. You can wear them underneath the suit, and you can't even tell you have them. But they are really scientifically designed to minimize whatever. And then you fling yourself at it. And I was always physical anyway. So in this one, I'm doing my own stunts, which, again, it's kind of something I'm used to it. This is my world. I was on a television show, NCIS New Orleans. And my character was being broken up. And by the way, I was playing a Serbian killer. And I did this Serbian accent the same way. Go online, how do I speak like a Serbian? And you can learn. And then you get the job, then go to a dialect coach and pay $120 or something and get it polished. Well, I was playing this Serbian mass killer, and they were breaking me out of jail. And they're supposed to take me around this vehicle, and the FBI's firing at the car. And so they explode the windows as if they'd been hit with gunfire. Well, they set them off prematurely. It was a miracle. Nobody got their eyes put out by the flying glass. But the actress on the show, rightly so, was terrified and really upset that this had happened. But for me, coming up in action movies, it's kind of like standard operating procedure. I mean, when I go to a job, I carry my own pads because I know I'm going to be doing that stuff. I don't mind doing it. But I'm also good at putting myself together again. But you know, as an athlete, you've got to know how to get yourself a chiropractic adjustment or a massage to recover from that kind of activity. Otherwise, you're going to get stiff and somebody's going to get hurt.
No, definitely. The movie that we're on as well. And also, the hardest thing with getting hurt and as with all of that is when people get tired on set. You know, you film something for so long and you get exhausted, you know, and mistakes happen. So
people they think it's a luxury, but the way I got through 180, 200 films and television shows with all of that fighting and action and doing your own stunts, although I did have a stunt double, Dave Rowden, for a number of years and a couple of other guys for really lethal stuff, because sometimes insurance purposes, they won't let you do something that's really, really dangerous. But the way I got through that was I would get a massage almost every day. And so you're not stiff, and it just makes everything, I think it's a secret weapon for acting. It makes everything pristine, much easier to do. You don't get neural discombobulation because you're out of alignment. It just makes life much easier. It's not a luxury. If you spend $2,000, $3,000 in a year for a massage, but you're making $300,000, $400,000, then it's an indispensable tool of the trade. So
definitely needed. All right, let's go to some of the movies that you have been in, some of the productions that you've been in. What is the most memorable one for you that you will always look back and say, that is my favorite, and that I loved for whatever specific reason? Is there anything specific?
You know, the question that you asked, it's kind of like saying, which child do you love the most?
Very true.
I've loved all of them for different reasons. Very hard to beat working with Steven Spielberg. and Janos Kaminski and all of that crew. Some of the most fun jobs I ever had, like I did a Vietnam TV series called Tour of Duty, but it was hysterical because Stephen Caffrey and Terry Knox, the leads, were some of the funniest people on the planet. Another job, you might develop some, you might find some method of emotional life that is really, really pivotal to your career. Like I did X-Files, and the guy was kind of a serial killer, romantic challenge serial killer, and so I did a lot of emotional work around my father for that one. So that was pivotal to that. So every job has its delights, and sometimes the jobs that pay a lot really aren't as exciting as some of the low budget stuff that you're doing your own dialect, you're shooting your own firearms, you're doing your own stunt driving. They all have their great, I mean, one show I got my dog. So it's wonderful things to be had in working as an actor. I just did a movie coming out called Nessie, where it was in Scotland, and really fun because it was a sort of a light comedy, and very different from a lot of stuff that I do. With a director named Robbie Moffat, and I love that experience. Working with the Brits is very different. You know, they start at 10 slow, and they finish around 5:30, and then they go to the pub 12 o'clock at night, and they do it every day. It's a totally different. Here we're like up at 6:30 and go until 2 a.m. sometimes. So it's like that was a wonderful job. Every job has something wonderful.
That's good to hear, because I've spoken to a couple of people that say there's one particular movie that they really loved, and the rest they always have these issues. So it's nice to know that if you look for the best parts of each job, you are going to go a lot further because you're enjoying it more.
I'm so blessed. You know, you take a movie like Free Willy, shooting off the coast of Vancouver, glorious, or the Westerns with Tom Selleck and Sam Elliott, beautiful landscapes, wild horses, getting to ride. War movies, you got helicopters and weapons you can play with. So there's always something really, really fun about acting. Acting for me is such a wonderful lark. It's a whole other thing when you're writing, directing, producing, and acting. Then the workload becomes almost transformatively heavy. So just acting is really, really awesome. It's just a lot of fun.
Well, I spoke to Eric Roberts. I had an interview with him, and obviously you worked with him in. Sorry, what was that?
I've done a lot of work with Eric.
You have.
Many shows,
Obviously, in Best of the Best, that's where I saw you guys working the first time.
Yeah, I think it was the first time.
Was it the first time? Okay.
Yeah, that was the first time, and we've maybe done 5, 6 jobs in. He works so much; he works every day, and they'll call me about every 3 or 4 jobs that he does. But I love Eric. He's great.
He's such a nice guy. He even did a voiceover for my very first production. So we did a very short film, very small short film, and it was incredible to have him on board with that. You know. One thing that sticks out from what he said to me was he's a kid in an adult body living a life as a child, and all he can do is pretend. For his whole career is about pretending to be something different, which is incredible. You know. Yeah. All right.
Really fine actor.
He is. I think he's a little bit underrated in my personal view. A lot of people just don't see him as.
Yeah, that is true, and although Vanity Fair just had a while back had an article about him, he likes to work so much he just does every job that comes his way. And there's a part of the business that chastises you for that. I don't agree with it. I think he's one of our finest actors, and he always delivers the goods. And he has sort of gone big jobs and little jobs. And I mean, they even do jobs where they go to his house and they film him at his house. I've actually acted with him at his house. By the way, Eliza is wonderful too, his wife.
She is.
She's great.
Definitely. She's those two are actually incredible people, and we've actually built up a little bit of a relationship. So it's actually so nice to have that contact, especially being here stuck in the bottom of Africa. It's still amazing to be able to speak to you guys who I've grown up with. It's one of the best things ever. I'm waiting for an interview with an actor that you've acted with in Time Cop. What was it like acting, first of all, in that movie, because it was also a brilliant movie, but with Jean-Claude Van Damme?
Well, we're actually trying to get him to play my brother in a movie right now. This movie I'm directing to come in for a couple of days. So I'm supposed to meet with him about around October 2nd or so. Jean-Claude, you know, I've done two movies with him. I did Death Warrant, and then I did Blackwater. Jean-Claude, much like Eric says, Jean-Claude is he's very charming. He is a really good storyteller. He's a good stager of fights. He's emotional. You know, one minute he's angry about something, the next minute he's very generous in the other regards. I sometimes get the notion, I mean this affectionately, that he was raised by a lot of women who adored him. And so he was indulged by the aunts and the grandmother and the mother and everybody else in the matriarchy. So he's an interesting character. He's an interesting character. I cover a lot about Jean-Claude in the book too. Volume 2 is we were just proofing it. As soon as I proof it and polish it, it'll be out, which I'm pleased about. It's one of the things I wanted to get done.
No, I'll keep a lookout for those and try to find the first volume as well. It will be interesting to read.
I think you'll enjoy it.
No, definitely. I'm sure I will. So far, I'm enjoying this.
I've been told it's a pretty good read. The second one is all show business. The first one has to do with my upbringing and the writing career and the bodyguarding stuff and the sort of the entry into. There's a lot of show business stuff too, and excerpted in the end. But I hope you enjoy it.
I'll definitely go and find it and read it, and I'll let you know what I think. But obviously, it's not, my opinion doesn't really count on that side. All right, quick one. We're going to be going into a little bit of a game show. Okay, it's nothing too scary, so please don't get worried about it. It's just a game show of movie quotes to see how well you know your movies. Okay,
and I hope I do well at this. I should actually, but we'll see.
We'll see. It's a little bit tricky.
Depends on how esoteric the quotes are. Go ahead.
Well, you see, that is the problem. A lot of people have said to me, "You've chosen weird and wonderful quotes," but my brain works. Whenever I hear a phrase or something, I'll always relate it to a movie if it makes sense in my brain, and that's how I live. You know, someone says something.
A lot of us are like that. It spurred on by Martin Scorsese's Goodfellas and all these other.
No, definitely. All right.